here. Please listen, okay? I've gone over and over what I wanted to say today and how I should say it, but there's no amount of words that could capture the impact that your choice to drink and drive had on me and so many people. And we're here, and now I realize that the impact is pretty obvious because so many people are here. I'm standing here thinking that he's going to walk through the doors and just smile, that gotcha smile, you know, that he used to have. And I wonder, like, when is this going to end? When is this nightmare going to end? I think you probably wonder the same thing. From the moment I received the phone call that my dad was killed, my world flooded with grief, fear, and uncertainty. That night, as my sweet newborn baby slept, I silently wept and packed her belongings to fly to Rhode Island to be with my family. The hardest feeling was the urge to call him. He was my rock and my biggest supporter. He was always there through every hard thing I went through, and every part of me just wanted to pick up the phone and tell him what happened. I still get that feeling. I want to pick up the phone and call him, and then I have that earth-shattering realization that I'll never speak to him again. When my dad was killed, my first daughter, Alana, was just 3 months old. Losing him filled my experience as a new mom with heartache, loss, and fear, and I can't help but wonder how different that experience would have been if you were here. I've seen social media posts that you've made, and when I see them, my heart wrenches. I know that you have a supportive dad, and mine won't ever be here to support me through the things that I go through or to watch his grandchildren grow. He won't be here to hold my stepmom again. My little brother was only 12 when he died, and he's without his dad forever. My children and my baby nephew won't ever know him, and he would have adored them. Every family event, every holiday, every milestone is a reminder that he's not here to share our joy, so that even happy moments are tinged with grief and the terrifying reminder that someone can take the life of someone you love unexpectedly and completely out of your control. Sometimes I live in fear that I'll get the call that another person that I love has been tragically lost. My dad was the strongest person I knew. He took care of us. He took care of our entire family, all of his friends, his employees, their families, anybody that crossed paths with him, he took care of. I remember the night that he took care of us and hired a driver when we went out. And the night that he booked a hotel on New Year's Eve to take care of us. He was the strongest man that I know. And if he could be taken in such a violent, unexpected way, then anyone could too. At my father's wake, I could see the edge of the fabric used to patch his head injury, and I thought, how could my daddy's head be so fragile? And at first, and sometimes still, I'm haunted by the idea that someone's head could just smash. I'd look at my tiny new daughter and think, if my dad's life could be taken so quickly and violently and unexpectedly, then what could happen to her? The fear was crushing and debilitating. Sometimes I get in the car and I can't help thinking it might be my last time I see my girls, and it's terrifying and real, and it takes everything in my power to just keep going forward. Because my dad was killed in an instant, completely outside of our control. It was shelter in place. We were all learning to cope with a new way of life and uncertainty, and going for walks is one of the ways that helped me cope. And after my dad was killed, I couldn't go for a walk without thinking at any moment a car was going to hit us. When a car passed, my heart would start to pound and my eyes would fill with tears, and I'd have to fight the urge not to run home or run into the grass with the stroller and just shrink to the ground, because I was reminded all over again of how he died. With my dad, even when I felt like the world was falling apart, he made me feel like everything was going to be okay. I often thought I was the luckiest girl in the world because he was my dad. And when he looked at my daughter for the first time, I knew that she was now the luckiest girl in the world. She was only 3 months when he was killed, and all of my dreams about visits from Grandpa and family trips and soccer games and time together were crushed the moment that you chose to drink and drive. Now when I see grandfathers with their grandchildren at the zoo, I move to tears. It's almost embarrassing. I say hello and they could just see I'm tearing up. Every milestone's bittersweet, and moments that were joyful remind me of him and how happy and proud he would have been to meet his grandchildren. He never got to meet my second daughter or my brother's newborn baby son, whose name is Alan. They'll never get to giggle at his funny faces, see his proud smile, or feel his safe hug. I wake up in the middle of the night now, and often my first thought is of my dad. My heart aches. I live in worry. Worry about my stepmom, who does not have his support, who will have to raise my little brother all by herself without his dad. I worry about my little brother to be faced with the start of a pandemic and our dad's death in the same week. My heartache seems unending and incurable, and it was completely preventable if you'd just not driven that night. If you hadn't broken the law, he'd be here. Cara, when you chose to drink and drive, you took my father's life, and with it, all of the good he would have done to those who knew him or those who would come to know him. My dad was the most generous man that I knew. If your path crossed his and you needed help, he would help you whether you liked it or not. When he died, people we barely knew contacted us to tell us stories of the way that he impacted their lives positively and the lives of their families. How could one man have so much energy, so much patience, so much generosity? He never stopped helping everyone he could. It was a principle that he lived. The night you killed him, you didn't just rob our family of a lifetime of memories yet to be made. You robbed the world of the positive impact he would have continued to make. This is really where I hope you're listening, because this part isn't easy for me. My hope for you is that from this moment on, you strive every day to make the world a better place and to help everybody whose life you pass. Because from this day on, your sentence is a day shorter with each passing day, and you can be with your family. I hope that you can even just a fraction fill the void that he left. And on your darkest days, even though I know it probably will bring you joy to help other people, and it's hard for me to swallow that. It's hard for me to stand here and say it because my dad was such a strong man. It's what he would have wanted to. Just do the right thing and help others from this moment on so that this never happens again.
Alan was my husband. During the pandemic, we stayed home to be safe. In that time, Alan discovered that he loved doing puzzles and helping me cook. Days later, he would be gone forever. I would be running down the street to see my husband in the middle of the road with paramedics giving him chest compressions. I screamed to him, thinking somehow he could hear me and come back to us. But then I saw the pools of blood around his head, and I knew that our lives would never be the same. Having to go home and tell our 12-year-old son that his father was hit by a car and that we had to go to the hospital was soul crushing, knowing that he was gone already. Mommy, I'm scared. Is Daddy going to be all right? Mason, Daddy is super strong, and he's going to fight to be with us. But no matter what happens, we're going to be okay. The whole time trying not to give my son too much false hope. Because he was already gone. On the way to the hospital, I wasn't even able to hold his hand because we had to go in the police car and it's plexiglassed off, so he just kept asking me if he was going to be okay, and I kept trying to falsely reassure him. I thank God that some of my family got to the hospital in time to help me give Mason the news and be there for me so I could make the most difficult phone calls to my oldest son and daughter to tell them about their dad. It was Mason's older brother, Alan Lewis, who washed his father's blood off the street so Mason and I didn't have to see it. The second time he had to go back with bleach because there was a neighborhood dog licking the pavement, and it was so disturbing that. Thank you for us. The removal of my husband's blood and brain matter from the road was not enough. Living there, only a couple of houses down from where Alan was struck, was debilitating. Just going out to the front of the house to get to the mail became too much to handle. Because of this, we decided to sell the house. A home that was built by Alan's grandparents and had been in his family for over 50 years. I had to move closer to my sister because now I'm a single parent. And not only does Mason not have one living grandparent, now he has no father. My daughter, Cassie, tells me that I'm not a single mother. I'm a widow, but this doesn't make me feel any better. I chose to be married and have a family. And I never realized how much joy was brought to my life to seeing Alan be a father to our children. And I chose Alan because of the type of man he was. The kind that makes you feel safe. He makes you laugh. He fixes people's problems even when they don't ask. He drops everything to help a friend. He never misses his kids' soccer games. He always kissed Mason goodnight no matter how tired he was. And every morning he made me coffee. Every morning he made me coffee even though he didn't drink it. The kind of man who called people Ubers if they drank too much, or hired drivers if we went out drinking, or rented hotel rooms so we could be responsible. Every day I drive my car in neighborhoods. Every day. And I drive 25 miles an hour or less, and I just think if she could have been just driving 25 miles an hour, maybe he could have lived. And every night I drink at home because I'm profoundly sad. But I stay home and I don't drive. And maybe if you did that today, he would be with us still. Cara, I'll probably never forgive you for what you did that night. Not only did you make the most irresponsible decision to drink and drive and take my husband's life, but you stole from me what may have been the final words that I could say to my husband that night. I don't know if you remember, but at the scene of the accident, I was screaming to him that I was there, hoping that somehow he would be okay. And you were screaming, he jumped out in the road, and we all know my husband was the most careful person. I know he didn't jump out in the road. But my husband was a great man. He believed in second chances. My hope is that whenever you get out of jail, which in my opinion will never be enough time, but when you do, that outside of whatever the court makes you do, that you dedicate some time to preventing drunk driving so other families like ours doesn't have to experience this terrible, terrible thing.
This statement is the hardest thing I've ever had to write, and my life would be a vast understatement. There are so many victims present in this courtroom today, those of whom became victims because of my actions on the night of March 27th, 2020. I want you to know that there has not been a single day that has passed since that terrible night that I have not thought of your family and the hell you were living. I know the pain and anger you feel towards me has probably only increased with time. With the time it has taken to get to this day, I want you to know that I never took for granted the fact that I was home with my family while you were grieving and awaiting justice. My husband and I struggled deeply with the decision to have my son after such tragedy occurred. And I want you to know that my decision to do so was in no way due to lack of understanding or empathy towards you and what you have endured. Every piece of my heart is absolutely shattered by the idea of being away from my rainbow baby and stepdaughter for a second of their lives. But I know I need to take responsibility for my uncharacteristic decision that night. I've always been taught to take responsibility for my actions, and I want to do so understanding the consequences. My stepdaughter was 11 at the time of the accident, very close in age to your husband's son. This will forever haunt me. The realization that my decision has caused children to grow without a father, a wife, to live without a husband, grandbabies, to grow up without knowing their grandfather is something I can never forgive myself for. I need you to know that while it can never be an excuse or an explanation, I was not myself that night. I made a terrible and emotional decision that goes against all that I have worked for and stood for in the past. I've devoted my life to caring for and rehabilitating others as a physical therapist. The day following that horrible night, I lost my job and thought I'd never be able to help patients again. I've worked for the last 1.5 years with geriatric patients with the ultimate hope of getting them home to their loved ones. I am so sorry for what I've taken from you. I'm accepting this sentence with great sadness, but also an understanding of the fact that on March 27th, your family and friends were given a life sentence without your loved one and without choice. I know there is much anger that you hold towards me. It's important to me that this horrible tragedy be the negative catalyst for safeguard and change. I saw your statement on the news about the importance of interlock safety systems. I need you to know that I will do all in my power to support safety changes like that, to allow for others to not repeat my mistakes and to prevent other families on both sides of tragedy of this nature from the crippling grief. I strongly and sincerely hope that some small speck of positive change can come from the unbearable pain you had to endure. In addition to auto safety features, I feel it's important to provide mental health awareness, especially for those who seem not to need it. I refuse to make excuses for my decision, but I will give explanation if and when you're willing and allow me to do so. I'm so sorry for the role I played in the choices I made that night. I will continue to pray for you, your family, and your friends every day. I realize that I could never have the right words to formulate the immensity of the apology you deserve. But I hope you know how deeply regretful I am. I see you, I hear you, and I am incredibly empathetic for the pain